Good morning and welcome to the Sunday morning sermon for Black Rock Baptist Church. Well, it's Father's Day. The celebration of fatherhood in Europe is known to date back to the at least 1508. But the commemoration of this special day did not begin in North America until 1910 in Spokane, Washington. Necktie and shirt manufacturers have rejoiced ever since. Then, a few years later, as the celebration began to catch on, a group in Wilkesburg, Pennsylvania, declared the dandelion the official Father's Day flower because they said that the more it's trampled on, the more it grows. The first Father's Day in Canada was celebrated in 1912. Something that Emma Bombeck wrote seems to express the sentiments of Father's Day better than most. Here's an excerpt from it. She says, "When I was a little girl, a father was like the light in the refrigerator. Every house had one, but no one really knew what either one of them did when the door was shut. My dad," she says, "left the house early every morning and always seemed glad to see everyone again when he arrived home at night. He opened the jar of pickles when no one else could. He was the only one in the house who wasn't afraid to go into the basement alone. He kept busy enough, for sure. He set most traps. He oiled my roller skates, and they went faster. When I got my bike, he ran alongside of me for at least 1,000 miles until I got the hang of it. He signed all my report cards. He took a lot of pictures, but he was never in them. I was afraid of everyone else's father, but not my own. Once I made some tea. It was only sugar water, but he sat in a small chair and he said it was delicious. He looked very uncomfortable. Once I went fishing with him. I threw rocks into the water and he threatened to throw me in if I didn't stop. I wasn't sure he wouldn't, so I looked him in the eye for a long time. I finally decided he was bluffing, so I threw some more rocks. He wouldn't have been a very good poker player. Whenever I played house, the mother doll had a lot to do. But I never knew what to do with the father doll. So I had him say, "I'm going off to work now," and I threw him under the bed. When I was 9 years old, my father didn't get up one morning and go to work. He went to the hospital and he died the next day. A lot of people came, bringing all kinds of food and cakes and sandwiches. We had never had so much company at one time ever before. I went to my room and I felt under the bed for the father doll. When I found it, I dusted him off and put him on my bed. I never knew that his leaving would hurt so much. She says it still does. Well, today we're taking the father doll out from under the bed. And we're honoring the dandelions, the refrigerator lights of society. And in doing that, we want to talk about a stepdad who was given a tremendous responsibility in raising God's son. His name was Joseph, the husband of Mary, the mother of Jesus. So go with me back in time as we consider Joseph's commitment and his concern and his faithfulness. First of all, Joseph was committed to the task that God had given him. The first part of Joseph's story is one of commitment. Commitment and happy expectations. Matthew chapter 1 verse 18 begins with these words. This is how the birth of Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. Now, we need to understand that a Jewish marriage ceremony consisted of 3 stages. The first stage was the engagement, and usually that was arranged by the parents. Parents would arrange the engagement without the young people even being involved in the decision. One example of that is in the Old Testament when Abraham sent his servant back to his home country to find a wife for his son Isaac. The servant found Rebekah and brought her back, and Isaac had never seen her before, and then she becomes his wife. The second stage of a Jewish marriage is the betrothal. During this time, the young couple agreed to the marriage. The groom signs a document declaring his responsibilities, and they are considered husband and wife, but they don't live together yet. The betrothal usually lasts about a year. It was a time for the groom to prepare the place where they would live. It was a time of building a relationship, of coming to know one another, and planning and dreaming and happy expectations. However, all of this suddenly ended in shock and disappointment for Joseph. For in verse 18 goes on to say, but before they came together, she was found to be with child. The Bible doesn't tell us when Joseph was told or who told him. Maybe Mary told him. Maybe she said something like, Joseph, I've got some wonderful news. I'm going to have a baby, and not just any baby. This is the Messiah, the one our people have been waiting for and praying about for so many years. An angel told me. I asked the angel, how can this possibly be? Because I've never slept with a man. The angel told me, that which is conceived in you, Mary, is of the Holy Spirit. It's a miracle, Joseph. Isn't it wonderful? Aren't you happy? But no, Joseph wasn't happy. He could not believe such an unbelievable story. And Joseph must have felt that Mary had betrayed him. But notice, even in this stage of disappointment, Joseph still loves Mary. Matthew chapter 1 verse 19 says, because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. The law said that Joseph could have taken her to the city gate, and the people there would have taken rocks and stoned her to death. Then Joseph's name would have been cleared and his reputation restored, but Joseph didn't do that. He decided not to disgrace her, but rather to divorce her quietly so that she could start her life over again. And he could start his life over again as well. That is when the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, telling Joseph what had really happened. That the Holy Spirit had caused Mary to conceive a child that would be God's only son. And God had a request of Joseph. Would Joseph be the father? Would he be a stepdad? Would Joseph raise God's son? Joseph had to decide. He had a decision to make here. He had to make a commitment about a child who didn't belong to him. He had to make a commitment to a marriage that would be held up to scorn and gossip. But Joseph said that he would. So Joseph took Mary to be his wife. So Joseph lives up to his commitment. He accepted the responsibility that God had given him. It was Joseph who put his wife on the donkey and began the long trip to Bethlehem. It was Joseph who found a place in which Mary could give birth. It was Joseph who helped her through the birth. It was Joseph who first saw the Son of God and then held in his hands God's only Son. Joseph had made a commitment, but I don't think he fully realized all that that commitment entailed. He didn't realize that he would have to serve as a midwife to help deliver God's only Son. But he had promised, and he didn't dodge his commitment. He kept his word because Joseph was committed to the task that God had given him. Secondly, Joseph was concerned. Joseph was also concerned. He was used to living in Nazareth, but now he's in Bethlehem. Somehow he had to support his wife and his child. So here was Joseph in Bethlehem trying to get some carpentry work, concerned about being able to provide for God's Son and take care of him and to take care of his wife. Jesus was about 2 years old when wise men from the east came and brought exotic gifts. And Joseph is warned to flee from Herod's murderous intent to kill Jesus. So Joseph uproots his family and he flees to Egypt. Later, he uproots them again and takes them to Nazareth. As you know, Mary and Joseph had several other children after that, and every year, along with many others from Nazareth, they would take their family to Jerusalem for the Passover feast. So we can understand what happened when Jesus was 12. They worshiped in Jerusalem, as they always did. And then they began the journey back home. That evening, as all of those who were traveling together stopped to rest for the night, Joseph may have asked Mary, where is Jesus? Mary answers, I thought he was with you. No, Joseph says, he's not with me. Where is he? They frantically searched, but Jesus was nowhere to be found. They rushed back to Jerusalem and began to look up and down the streets, but they couldn't find him anywhere. Finally, they go to the temple and they notice a meeting is taking place. The Sadducees and the Pharisees are sitting around, nodding their bearded heads and looking intently at the speaker. Who's that speaker? That's Jesus, a 12-year-old boy. Mary rushes up to him, and in front of the gathering of spiritual leaders, she says, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you everywhere." And Jesus says something that Joseph would never forget. "Didn't you know that I had to be in my father's house?" Joseph realized that Jesus had just one mother, but he had two fathers. And it was Joseph's responsibility to turn him loose and let Jesus be doing the things that God had sent him to do. God had given Jesus on loan to Joseph. Joseph was a steward, a manager, to help Jesus develop and to grow. Joseph, he was committed, he was concerned, And then thirdly, Joseph was faithful. Joseph probably made some decisions along that long road back to Nazareth. He would do the very best he could to help Jesus be about his Father's business, to help Jesus be the person God wanted him to be. But Joseph's problem was that he was just a carpenter. Just a carpenter. William Barclay says that in ancient days, the carpenter was a man who probably had 2 chisels, a hammer, a saw, and a square. But with just those few tools, he could make a chair or a table, a bridge or a house. He wasn't just a workman. He was a craftsman. He was a carpenter. And it's obvious that Joseph had an impact upon Jesus' life. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he talked about a fellow who had some sawdust in his eye. He talked about 2 men, 2 carpenters who built houses. One wise, one very foolish. Toward the end of Jesus' ministry, when he was trying to communicate to the disciples the importance of finishing what you start, he told of a man who wanted to build a tower, but who first went out and got all the materials to make sure that he could finish what he was going to start. He'd be able to finish the job. Joseph didn't teach Jesus about aristocrats. He didn't teach him about speech making. But by his example, he taught him to finish what you start. And how to handle disgruntled customers. He taught Jesus to pay his bills, to treat his mother with respect. He taught him to take care of his younger brothers and sisters. Joseph didn't know that sometime before the beginning of Jesus' ministry, God would call him home and leave the family fatherless. And that the boy he trained, the boy he worked with, the boy he sawed lumber with and chiseled wood with, would take his place and become a father to his younger brothers and sisters. Joseph had no idea that the work that God had called his son to do was the work of a carpenter. And then when Jesus was 33 years old, he would construct a bridge that would span eternity. Joseph had no idea that one day a carpenter's product, a wooden cross, would be the greatest monument that this world has ever known. All Joseph did was to be a stepdad to Jesus. All Joseph did was to keep the commitment he'd made to God. All Joseph did was to take a few tools and help mold Jesus, the Son of God. I came across an interesting poem a while back. It's entitled A Father's Love. Listen as I read this. It says, "We hear about a mother's love in story and in song, how staunch it is through trial and storm, how tender and so strong, how sweet and pure and beautiful, and every word is true. But what about a father's love that claims some notice too? A father delves the deepest mine. He climbs the girders high. He swings upon the scaffolding between the earth and sky. It's father who bends his aching back and bows his graying head to bear the burdens of the day and earn the family's bread. To rear the little ones the Lord has entrusted to his care. All honor to the mother's love. To rear the little ones the Lord has entrusted to his care. All honor to the mother's love, so kind, tender, and true. But don't forget the Father's love, so faithful and strong for you. So to all you dandelions out there, to all you refrigerator lights, to all fathers, the dolls that have been thrown under the bed, this is your day. You might feel inadequate for the task God has called you to do. But just like Joseph, you must make a commitment. Just like Joseph, you must be concerned, not just for the physical well-being of your family, but for their spiritual well-being as well. And you must understand that you are a steward, you are a manager, and God has given you just a little while with your children. You must concentrate, you must consecrate yourself to God. And with God's help, be the best father you can be. To do the best job you can do because God has called you to be a father. This morning, there may be some who have never known God as their father, have never known that God has the same commitment, the same concern for you that Joseph had for Jesus. Regardless of whether you're a father or a mother or whoever you are, we ask that you make a decision this morning, to make a commitment, to do what God asked you to do, to give your heart and your life and your soul to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and make your life count for Him. God bless. Have a wonderful day, and until we meet again, let's continue to exchange prayers daily.